Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Wright Brothers podcast. John, it's been a little while.
It has. Although we did one fairly recently.
Which one was this?
When you came over to visit me, didn't we do one?
Wasn't that over the summer?
Oh yeah, I guess it was.
Yeah, no, it's almost November, John. It's Halloween on Monday.
Man, life goes by so fast.
I know, it's too bad. October's the best month too. It's the best month for sports, definitely. You've got the World
There's
Series.
so much happening right
You've got
now,
football. You've got the start of basketball. It's pretty great. Premier League, if you're into that.
Cubs are in the World Series.
I know. Although Tito Francona, 10-1 in World Series games. I'm a little nervous for the Chicagoites.
Yeah. So definitely a lot going on.
Yes. In this particular podcast, though, we are going to focus on this new beautiful NBA season, which I am very excited about.
Me too. There's definitely a lot going on. And we did something this year, which I did last year, which is we entered a pool with some friends to give our projections on whether we think teams will beat their over-unders that were given to them by Las Vegas betting pools. And so we're here to sort of tell you whether we think teams are going to beat their Las Vegas projections or not.
Not that we would ever encourage anybody to do any illegal betting or gambling of any kind.
Yeah, we're not actually gambling on this.
No.
There might be like a free lunch or something, but I don't think that actually happened last year, so it's all just for fun.
Free lobster tempura dinner a la Jalen and Jacoby.
Yeah, if William wins, he's going to squeeze the most he can out of that free lunch.
Yeah, exactly. And William probably will win because I think I paid the most attention to the NBA here, but we'll see.
That's true. And for evidence for that, I'll just say that last year I did this as well, and my strategy was to be kind of like contrarian. My expectations were that teams would sort of revert back to 500, so I ended up picking the overs for the bad teams and the unders for all the good teams.
Not a good season to do that last year.
Yeah, needless to say, it did not work out very well.
Yeah,
I think I got like 10 right out of 30.
Oh, okay. Well, hey, this I think we'll improve upon it this time. So
that's like scoring a 33% on a true-false test.
Or hitting 300 in baseball, which is pretty good.
if baseball were a true-false test, yeah.
Hey,
I think that was highlighted by picking the under on the Warriors.
Yeah, that's... well, we'll see how that goes for this one.
Yeah, I'm definitely adopting a different strategy this year. I think mostly what I did was look at the win-loss records from last year, and I tried to sort of guess whether I thought they were better than last year by that amount or not. So we'll see. It can't be much worse than last year, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. All right. So just for a little bit of scheduling, we're gonna go from the bottom up. So for the teams with the lowest over/unders, we're gonna start there. We're gonna go up, and we're gonna start with the Eastern Conference, and then get to the Western Conference, so that by the end of the Western Conference podcast, you will be getting the best teams of the best.
Right. We're just going to do the Eastern Conference in this podcast, so you don't have to listen to us for too long at once. And then tomorrow we will be recording the Western Conference.
Yes. All right. So let's get into this. Who is the worst team by projected over/under, John?
That would be the Brooklyn Nets.
Good choice. Love
yeah,
Brooklyn.
That's understandable.
No offense, Brooklyn, but actually lots of offense. I'm not really big on New York City, but in any case, the Nets are not going to be good this year.
No, they're pretty terrible, especially on defense. But they're actually like kind of fun.
Yeah, well, they almost beat the Celtics the other night in the opener of the season.
Oh yeah, I mean anything can happen in any given game, and I like their backcourt. They have Linsanity first of all at point, and then shooting guard Bojan Bogdanovic.
Bojan. Is it Bojan or Bogdan?
I
think it's Bogdan. I think it's Bogdan Bogdanovic.
But
it's the good
I just
one.
have to go over his year he had last year, especially his summer. You remember in last year's podcast, I made some sort of like disparaging comment about him. Yes. I was like, if Bojan Bogdanovic is your shooting guard, you know you're in trouble. Well,
did pretty dang well in the Olympics.
He did. So his 3-point shooting last year in the NBA went up from like low 30s to low 40s, which is really good.
Yeah.
Percentage-wise of shooting threes. And then in the qualifying for the Olympics this summer, he was Croatia's best player, according to Dario Saric.
And just the eye test, if you watch the games. I actually watched a fair number of the Croatia games because I was interested in some of their younger guys. He just took over a lot of those games.
Oh, yeah. So after they qualified for the Olympics this summer, he went to Turkey for his vacation.
Mm-hmm.
And and he happened to be in the hotel right near the president of Turkey during the coup,
Oh dear. Oh dear.
attempted coup. And so he actually escaped by speedboat across the Mediterranean to Greece, and then flew and got to Rio just in time for the games,
This doesn't
where
surprise me at all.
he led the tournament in scoring.
Yeah. No, he's definitely got like a don't F with me vibe. If you watch like the end of some of those games, he was taking on all comers, taking every big shot. The only thing is, the Nets do not have a ton of talent around him, and if he's either your best or your second best player, depending on how much you like Brook Lopez, it's not a good sign.
That's right. That's actually pretty much exactly what I was going to say about the overall roster talent. Just, fun guys that I like. You also have Isaiah Whitehead, the guy who did so well for Seton Hall in the tournament, and they have Joe Harris,
Oh, sorry, I forgot Joe Harris.
aka the next LeBron James.
I assumed you would now just put all of your UVA fandom onto Malcolm Brogdon now that he's breaking NBA rims.
Oh, we'll get to Malcolm Brogdon.
Oh,
Don't you
okay,
worry.
all right. So you haven't given up on Joe Harris. That's good. But I'm still taking definitely the under for the Nets. So their over/under is 20.5 games. I'm putting them under.
Interesting. I'm taking the over.
You think this game? You think this team is going to win 21 games?
Maybe, but I don't know. I went with yes when I picked the over-unders, and I'll tell you my reasoning is because they don't have the incentive to tank
This is true.
that some other teams will once their seasons inevitably start to fall apart.
Mhm. The Boston Celtics own their draft picks.
Their draft picks with Boston, so it really doesn't help them at all to bottom out and lose. And yeah, it's going to be really sad when they still finish behind every other team.
The one thing I have to say that could counter that lack of incentive to tank is that I think the Nets are probably going to trade Brook Lopez. I don't think he's going to stay on the team this whole year. I mean, he's a productive offensive player if he's not that good on defense. And honestly, this team needs draft picks. They need to get younger, and they can't do it through their own picks, so they're going to have to acquire some. That'll probably be by trading somebody like Brook Lopez.
Yeah, I think they need to just let Joe Harris take the reins, but...
Or they could do that.
Yeah, but anyway, we'll see. Interesting, we have our first split.
Yeah.
The next team up on our list is the Philadelphia 76ers, projected for 24.5 wins. Where do you have them, over or under?
I have them under. I thought about it. I briefly considered the over, even after the Ben Simmons injury, but especially with that, I couldn't bring myself to contemplate them winning 25 games. I just can't see it. They have no guards to speak of, and they have some interesting front court players, but they don't all match together, and they're probably going to end up training at least one, if not two of them at some point.
Yeah, I have a very similar assessment of the team, and I also took the under, mostly because they won 10 games last year, and this projection is for them to win 15 more games than they did last year.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they're that much better, especially considering the injuries. Nerlens is out, as well as Ben Simmons, and who knows how long some of their injury-prone guys like Okafor and Joel Embiid will hold up.
I do like Embiid, though.
But yes, that's the thing. So that's also why I consider the overs, because they have potential superstars. I mean, Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons might be top 25 players when they actually get to playing.
I don't know about that. Maybe Embiid. Ben Simmons, I don't know how well he'll adapt to the NBA. I don't know how much he'll actually be able to score with the way that he likes to attack the rim and can't shoot much. He's definitely going to be a visionary, game-changing player in the way he passes and the way he is able to handle the ball as a big man. But I think in terms of actual productivity, just coming in at the start, you're going to see a lot more from Embiid. And it's really great to see, especially because he's been out for 2 years since he's been drafted.
I agree. I'm really hoping he actually stays healthy.
Well, he had, 20
situation.
points in 22 minutes? It's not bad.
That's really good.
Yeah.
But I think the mission for this year is definitely just to get everyone healthy and to gain some experience and maybe start pushing eventually.
Yeah, so I
next
think
years.
they could maybe break 20 wins. I wouldn't be that surprised if they won 10 more games, but 25 seems high to me. I'm going under.
I agree with you on the under. It has been 4 years since they've beaten this over-under of 24.5.
Yeah.
So feeling pretty good about that one.
Mm-hmm.
Next up, we have the Miami Heat. Their projection is 34.5.
This was honestly one of the toughest teams for me. I think the Eastern Conference in general was harder for me to predict just because so many teams have like changed relatively drastically, and there's going to be a lot of turnaround from what the league was last year. But the Heat, so they lost Dwayne Wade. He was pretty good. He was good for 20 points a game most nights, even though he didn't play defense and he couldn't really shoot threes. But in the playoffs, he actually made a pretty big difference. And in the regular season, they're going to miss his scoring. They replaced him essentially with Dion Waiters, who I've always kind of thought as, Dwayne Wade light, just, not as smart or as good at basketball. So that's going to hurt. They're going to mainly be playing through Dragic and Whiteside, and they're going to be giving a lot of playing time to the younger guys, so Richardson and Justice Winslow, who I like. But if you look behind them, look at their bench, there's not really too many guys there.
The other guy I would point out is Tyler Johnson, who everyone freaked out about when he got $50 million.
Yeah, it's because he's not very good.
Yeah, he looked pretty good, I heard, so far in the season, but early days.
I don't really like him.
And don't forget they also lost Chris Bosh.
That's true. Chris Bosh also out.
Their best player.
Which is really sad.
Yeah, it's unfortunate for sure for the Heat.
Hey, fun fact. Guess who's still on this roster?
Oh, wait, who is it?
Udonis Haslem. Also, they have like Luke Babbitt, Rodney McGruder is like playing minutes for them.
Udonis Haslem would outlast Dwayne Wade.
They brought in James Johnson, Wayne Ellington. I really just don't like this roster very much. I actually kind of like the Derek Williams pickup, but that's basically it. I really don't like this lineup. I think they have possible incentive to tank, although Pat Riley does have a habit of not doing that. We'll see how it goes. I just don't see them winning 35 games in a potentially better than it was last year Eastern Conference.
Okay, so you have the under.
Yes.
I have the over. So we split again.
Ooh, lots of division. I like it.
I wanted to pick the under because I agree that they are going to be worse than last year, but this is a drop-off from a team that won 48. You're saying they're going to lose 14 or more games less than last year. That's a pretty steep drop, especially if you consider that they played without Bosh and Wade for stretches. Those young guys, Winslow, Tyler Johnson, Josh Richardson, they might be okay. I think they will play hard. They're another team that doesn't have a strong incentive to tank based on their having already traded away draft picks to Phoenix. But that could happen. And I think if you're picking the under, they're the third lowest team in the East, tied for the third lowest, you're picking them to tank.
Yeah.
And I could see them fighting for the 8 seed. So I will take the over, but I'm not going to make it one of my locks.
Yeah.
We do have 5 locks to give out for teams that we feel super certain about, so you'll see those coming up.
Right, yeah. No, if this team wins more than 35 games, it's going to be because Dragic and Whiteside play really well, and Justice Winslow takes a big jump forward in his shooting. I just really don't think the bench is deep enough to play any sort of meaningful role. And if there is some kind of injury, especially to one of the front court players, they're kind of screwed.
Can't argue with that. We shall see. The next team on our list is tied with the Heat in over-under projections at 34.5 wins. The Milwaukee Bucks. I like to call them Team Wingspan.
It's a good name.
They added in the draft Thon Maker and Malcolm Brogdon, so they're really they're doubling down there on their.
And then they traded for MCW.
Oh, and Michael Carter Williams. Yep.
Yeah, who's one claim that he has to potentially having any kind of potential in the NBA is he's got really long arms.
All right, so they've cornered that market.
Yes,
somewhat.
They have. And so this is actually my first over of the day. I think that this line is way too low. I think they've got them at 34.5 wins. I think this team can easily win 35 games. I think they're going to be challenging for the playoffs. They've got a pretty good roster. Unfortunately, the loss of Chris Middleton is going to hurt because I think he was probably their most consistent player. But we're going to have point guard Giannis, which will be really fun to watch. I'm actually
6'11", 8-foot wingspan point guard.
Yeah, who's going to be dribbling up and down the floor, just dunking all over people. It's going to be great. They added Teletovic, which I think was actually a bit of an underrated signing. I think he's pretty good.
Yeah, because they need shooting.
And he brings shooting and a veteran presence, which this team doesn't have a lot of. They added Malcolm Brogdon, who I think was pretty underrated, actually, coming out of Virginia. I think he's a really good player, and I think he's going to be good in the NBA. He's already broken one NBA rim on his first game against the Mavericks.
That was pretty sweet.
Although if you watch it, he didn't like hammer it down or anything. I think he just like hung on it accidentally and just like snapped it.
I think he has like magnetic superpowers or something. Just like drag the metal down.
Yeah, but they have Jabari Parker,
Yeah.
who I still like. I hope he plays well. I was really sad when he got injured his first season out in the NBA. They added Dellavedova, who I'm not a huge fan of, but is again one of these veteran guys who can go out and do some really important things for your team. And then they've got Thon Maker, which is going to be one of the funner storylines to watch, I think. It's just whether or not he can adapt to the NBA. He reminds me a lot of Giannis in the way he plays. So maybe there'll be a similar development pathway there. I don't know.
I agree, especially with Brogdon. I think he has a legitimate shot to get solid minutes this year, especially with Middleton going down. I don't think it's fair to expect him to be as good as Chris Middleton, who was probably the best player last year.
Mm-hmm.
I'm taking the under, so we part ways again,
Ooh.
although you make a very good argument. It's definitely one I could see going either way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't
know,
lock this.
I don't think it's a team that looks very good offensively. And the word that I was reading is that people seem to have sort of figured out Jason Kidd's defensive scheme a little bit as well, in ways that they can still get open threes. And I don't know. I'm taking the under.
I think Jason Kidd's a really good coach, and I wouldn't be that surprised if somebody has figured out his defensive scheme if he just changed his defensive scheme, but we'll see.
We shall see.
Yeah, we shall see. I like all this disagreement. This is good. It'll be a very clear divide at the end of the season.
All the same picks, but
yeah.
It's the opposite. Okay. We did not share our picks with each other before this.
No, we did not. Next up are the Orlando Magic at 37.5 games. This is a pretty big jump for them, right?
They won 35 games last year.
Okay,
so
never mind. 2.5.
They would need to win three more games than they won last year. It's definitely doable for them. I have the under because I just don't think they're that good. They do have a really good defense, but I think probably not enough offense to compete for a playoff spot. They're kind of like the anti-Warriors. That's how I see them. They're like the opposite of pace and space. Everyone just can stay compact against them because it's a lot of big guys aren't the most skilled and can't really shoot very well.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about this team. I really want to like them. I want them to do well. They've got a lot of players who I'm interested in. I was not a huge fan of the trade that they made with the Oklahoma City Thunder. I thought, well, it's good to get Serge Ibaka. I thought that they gave away a little bit too much, especially when you consider that they just brought in Bismack Biyombo, and now there's going to be issues playing him, Ibaka, Gordon, and Vucevic. And now with the loss of Oladipo, their backcourt is, I don't know, not as frightening for opposing teams. Elfrid Payton still can't shoot, and until that changes, they're going to have a real problem spacing the floor, especially if you're trying to play Aaron Gordon at the 3 or the 4. And so you're going to be relying on Serge Ibaka to spread the floor, which he can do fairly well, at least in Oklahoma City, but he was getting open shots there. I don't know if that's going to continue with less players around him. Fewer. Yeah, lesser is more what I meant to say. They brought in Jeff Green. You never know what Jeff Green's going to do.
That's true. But so I take it you're taking the under for them?
I am taking the under.
Okay. Yeah, I think if you wanted to pick the over, you would sort of have to pick one or two players that you think are going to start to take over and ascend offensively. And I just don't know if someone like Vucevic or Ibaka is really going to take them to the next level.
I would actually keep an eye on this team as possible trade partners with somebody, like maybe the Celtics, but that's kind of what I want to happen, is maybe they offload one of their big men who can help protect the rim for a guard that would actually be useful. But we'll see. I don't know. And maybe Hazonia takes a bigger role this year than he did last year. He was kind of disappointing for all of us who were really excited for Mario Hazonia, Super Mario, but maybe this year he's a little bit better. I don't know. I still think the under makes more sense.
Interesting. Anything can happen in the East, but we are both taking the under on the Orlando Magic. The next team we have is we have a tie between projected 9th and 10th in the East. We'll go first to the Chicago Bulls. Their projection is 38.5 wins. They won 42 games last year, and they added Dwayne Wade, and Rajon Rondo. So I don't know. Can you explain why their projection is going down from last year with these additions?
Yeah, if you look at their roster, they can't really shoot. Could be a real problem. They brought in two guards who are really great players, at least in theory, in Rondo and Wade, but neither of them are shooters. Neither of them can take 3-point shots reliably, and Rondo apparently can't even make free throws anymore. So if he's scared to go to the rim, he's not super useful. Dwayne Wade will still, I think, be good for another year or two. I think going to Chicago, he'll have reason to try and prove something to people. Jimmy Butler, I like a lot. I think he can be a better shooter than people have projected him to be. There's going to be supposedly some issues here on this team with chemistry, maybe, of people wanting the ball. There's a lot of ball dominant players in Rondo, Wade, and Butler. But honestly, I look at this roster from top to bottom, and I see a 40-win team here. I'm taking the over. I think they've got a lot of talent and people on the bench who will have probably smaller roles because they're not in the starting lineup. But Bobby Portis, Denzel Valentine, Jerry Grant, Taj Gibson, these are all really good potential NBA players. Taj Gibson has already showed that he can play even in a limited role. He can play really well. So I think the question will hinge on whether or not Mirotic and Butler are enough to space the floor.
I thought Valentine was very fun to watch in college. He's a very good distributor. It'll be interesting to see if maybe he can make the offense flow better. And I agree with everything you say in terms of the offense, especially about ball dominance. There's only one ball. The reason it works to have a bunch of superstars in Golden State is because you just pass the ball, you move and you shoot. You don't hold on to it for 5 seconds, dribbling and playing ISO basketball. And that's kind of what you expect from players like Wade and Rondo. So I do think that's going to be a problem. And so you need someone to take a step back and be more of an off-ball player. So if you would expect that to be anybody, you'd expect that to be Jimmy Butler. But Dwayne Wade says this is Jimmy Butler's team going forward, so we'll have to see how that all plays out. I'm also taking the over because I think they just have too much talent to be, at more than 2 games under 500. I agree with all these criticisms, but I think they've pushed the line too far down at 38.5.
Yeah, I agree.
So
I think
it sounds like we're about in the same place, kind of a bottom tier playoff team.
if they had made the over under like 40, I would have no idea what to think. But I think this team is good for pretty much a 500 record at least, just because of the talent they've got and the experience. I can't see them losing over half of their games by that much.
Right, and tied with them in sort of a similar spot in terms of roster construction are the New York Knicks, also projected at 38.5. I also, let's see. No, actually, I have the under on them.
This is another one I had some trouble with. I don't feel good about this, but I'm taking the over.
Okay, interesting.
Why did you go under? Just outline it for the listeners. I'll probably agree with everything you say.
Okay, so we're agreeing on what we say. We're just disagreeing on the actual overs and unders.
This is a close one. What do you think?
I think this was a questionable decision to be investing in the All-Stars from 2012, 2011.
Mm-hmm.
Derrick Rose, people say, like, oh, take a chance. You don't know, maybe he could be the MVP he used to be. But I don't think people are realizing just how bad he's been. He isn't just, like, no longer an MVP or top 10 guy. He was one of the worst players in the league. He was actively hurting the Bulls, both offensively and defensively, last year. He ranked 68th out of 71 players among point guards in real plus minus.
Yeah,
so
that's not great.
I don't see him as any sort of game changer in the positive direction for the Knicks. Joakim Noah, I think, could be a more valuable free agent, but there's just too many question marks about whether he can actually stay healthy, especially at his age.
Yeah, I've already been hearing some rumblings about his health.
Yeah, it's just like a misfit kind of band of ex-superstars, and I don't see it succeeding very well. They won 32 games last year. I don't think they're 7 games better than that.
Yeah, I'm looking at this now, and I'm really wishing I had taken the under, but I didn't, so let me try and defend the over, if I can. Wow, their bench is really thin. So one thing I think people are possibly underrating is this Spanish guy Willie Hernan Gomez. I don't know if you watch much of him in the Olympics, but he's actually pretty good, and I think he could potentially be useful, especially if Joakim Noah has the health problems that we think he will. Also, if you're not starting Joakim Noah due to injury or what have you, that I think gives New York the option to play the lineup that I think will be best for them, which is but doing a little bit more bully ball. So you put Carmelo Anthony down at the 4, and then Kristaps Porzingis, the Latvian, the Latvian. He's I guess if you don't list a Bill Simmons, that wouldn't make any sense. But he's going to be playing as a 5 maybe, but also shooting from the outside, and that's going to be a lot harder for other team centers to guard. I think it'll open up spacing on the floor for people like Derrick Rose and Brandon Jennings. I don't know. I think that even if they lose Joakim Noah, this team could still potentially win some games.
I agree. Porzingis is definitely a budding potential superstar.
Mm-hmm.
And it is the East, anything can happen, but I feel pretty good about this. I'm actually going to make it my first lock, is to pick the under on the Knicks.
All right, so even if I'm not clear on the over-under, I wouldn't go lock on this. There's just too much uncertainty.
Fair enough. We now move on to the projected playoff teams in the East. And the team that is number 8 right now, or at the time we picked in the Las Vegas over-unders, the Washington Wizards.
Yeah.
42 and a half wins.
The Wizards.
Won games last year.
Yeah, so let's just outline this. They won 41 games last year with Flip Saunders. Or not Flip Saunders, excuse me. No, Flip Saunders, my bad. Wrong guy. Because he actually wasn't that bad. Also,
Randy Whitman?
Yeah, Randy chess match Whitman. Just every game with him was just a pleasure, an absolute pleasure to watch. Especially,
he got a lot of flack for the way he ran the offense.
So you know that clipboard thing where he was holding the clipboard wrong side. He was holding it upside down, and the cameras caught him flipping it.
Vaguely.
Yeah, it was kind of funny thing on the internet. It didn't just happen once; it happened twice. This guy was an idiot. I'm sorry, he was not a good NBA coach. And now they're getting Scott Brooks. And while there were a lot of people who didn't like what he did in Oklahoma City, I think that was a really tough team to coach just based on the way that Durant and Westbrook like to play. I thought that while they got a lot of criticism for playing a lot of ISO ball and the coach wasn't putting in enough offensive schemes, I don't really know what people expected from that just based off the way they play. I think that he'll be able to do a lot more things with this Wizards roster just because, I don't know, it's not based on one or two guys holding the ball for 5-10 seconds. That's not the players that Bradley Beal and John Wall are. And they only need to improve 2 wins over a horrendous head coach in an injury-riddled year. They've gotten rid of Nene. There's a lot of dead weight off of them. Kelly Oubre is a year better. And also, last year, the backcourt was kind of messed up with Bradley Beal being injured and the backup point guard being Ramon Sessions for half the year. And now they've got this European guy who's actually supposed to be pretty good.
Satoransky?
Yeah, he's 6'7". He's a really big backup point guard, and people really like him.
Interesting. I will say I'm not a huge fan of the bench overall. It seems like a bunch of ragtag guys kind of across from the league who have bounced around a lot. Nicholson, I gather, has done pretty well in the preseason and early regular season. But I agree with you. I'm actually going to do something I don't usually do and be optimistic about one of the teams I like and take the over.
Interesting.
They definitely had bad luck last year. I think that adds up to at least 2 wins. I think people last year were projecting them, top 5 in the East or so?
Yeah, and they were pretty disappointing.
Yeah, they don't even need to be that good to beat their over-under, so we take the over on the Wizards.
Yeah, we should mention that Otto Porter also made some pretty big strides last year, and that Markieff Morris now has a full season with the Wizards, and I think he's a player who could potentially be really good, while chemistry issues aside.
The starting lineup as a whole definitely feels like a bunch of guys who haven't quite reached their potential and could move up a level, even someone like John Wall, but definitely Bradley Beal, Otto Porter, Markieff Morris as well.
Yeah. So we both feel good about the over for the Wizards.
High upside there.
Yeah.
Next, the Charlotte Hornets actually tied with the Wizards at 42.5 wins on their over-under. They won 48 last year.
Yeah, so this is a projected drop.
Right. See, they lost Al Jefferson and Jeremy Lin and Courtney Lee. They do get Michael Gilchrist, though, who missed, I believe, all of last year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he played pretty well in their first game as well. Kemba Walker coming back from a strong season. Nicholas Batum did not play all that well in the Olympics. He also got his big contract extension last year, so he might not be playing for as much. Marvin Williams way overperformed last year, I thought. That'd be great for them if he could continue shooting at the rate that he's been, but I just don't see that as being very likely. And Cody Zeller, I like him in theory, but I don't know if he's a good enough starting center in the league.
That's a good way to put it. If he doesn't work out, though, they have Roy Hibbert.
Yeah, because Roy Hibbert's been just terrorizing people in the league recently.
Yeah, I know you're a big Roy Hibbert fan.
I do love Roy Hibbert. I'm a big Georgetown guy. But
yeah, I think the story is definitely Kemba Walker with this team. He's started to ascend to an all-star level, so it'll be interesting to see how well he can do.
Mm-hmm.
I am going to just barely take the under with them. I feel like they could win 42 or 41 wins, so 42 and a half. I'm going just under. I see them in that kind of battle for the 8th seed.
I actually did exactly the same. Looking at their roster, I could definitely see somebody making a case for the over. I think they've got a lot of talent, and if they're really invested, and I think they will be, I think Kemba Walker, if Michael Gilchrist can stay healthy, if Marvin Williams continues to shoot well, if Batum has a good year, they definitely have the potential to win more than this, but I took the slight under as well.
And their coach did well last year's, Clifford.
Yeah, people seem to like him.
Yep.
All right.
The projected 6th seed, the Atlanta Hawks at 43.5. They call it Hawklanta.
That's not very good. I like the ATL. That's not a bad nickname.
Yeah, that's a much better nickname. Atlanta. They also have a new show now. I've heard it's actually good.
Donald Glover.
Yeah, has 100% right now on Rotten Tomatoes.
All right. Well, I've never quite gotten on board with Rotten Tomatoes. I thought some of their ratings have been kind of crazy.
Donald Glover, a.k.a. Lando Calrissian.
Yes, I'm so excited for him to be Lando. He's great. If you haven't watched Community, definitely go watch that. He's pretty great. But supposedly this is pretty good as well. So Atlanta's actual acquisitions over the offseason, they brought in Dwight Howard. I don't quite know how to feel about that. Chris Humphries they had last season, but then they lost some very important pieces, most notably Al Horford.
Mostly it seems like a substitution at 2 positions. They substituted Dwight Howard for Al Horford and put Dennis Schroeder into the starting lineup for Jeff Teague.
Although that had sort of started last year anyways.
Right, he had already sort of done that. The bigger turnover is definitely Dwight Howard for Al Horford. Very different players at the same position.
Mm-hmm.
Horford is definitely more skilled offensively. Dwight Howard maybe does a little bit more defensively and in terms of rebounding.
Yeah, so, I mean, he started the year well. He's like 19 rebounds, I think, in his first game. So he's playing well, but I just don't think he fits the system very well. Part of the reason that people really like this Hawks team is what they did 2 years ago, and just the idea that Coach Buds is able to play, Spurs light, able to space the floor, have good shooters, and part of that was dependent upon their big guys, Paul Millsap and Al Horford, being able to space the floor and take 3-point shots. And Dwight Howard should never, ever, ever, ever take a 3-pointer in his life, ever.
I think you're safe there. Millsap can shoot threes, though.
Yeah, Millsap is quite good.
He's their best player.
Yeah, for sure. Now that Horford's gone, Kyle Korver was not as good last year. So if he is, gone on the wrong side of the hill, that's troubling for them. Cephalosha, if he's healthy, he can be a good defensive player. They've got Mike Scott, who we like a lot. And then, I don't know, Thiago Splitter was really disappointing for them as a backup. I guess he was injured also last year for a while. I just don't see enough talent on this team to make up for what they lost in Al Horford. And also, I think that the East in general has gotten better, so I see this team getting worse. I see the Hawks actually as an under.
Okay, I'm actually going to take the over. Two years ago, they did win 60 games, and I don't think they're that good, but last year they won 48 games, and this year their over-under is, they have to beat is 43.5, so they might be a little worse than last year. They might be like a 44-win team and still be able to beat their over-under. I think someone like Corver is more likely to bounce back than to keep declining. And it's going to be interesting to see how well Schroeder does in this new expanded role. He could be one of these guys that you've seen take over the East in new, young, ascending point guards like Isaiah Thomas, Kemba Walker, Reggie Jackson, etc.
Hmm.
So I'm going to gamble on the over with Atlanta.
Well, Schroeder just, I think, signed what was a 4-year contract extension with Atlanta, so they feel pretty confident about him as well. So, they're optimistic, just like you are today. It's very strange.
We'll see. I did. Did you count your overs unders to split them like 15 and 15?
No, I didn't. I don't think that's necessary. Just because some teams are going to be like way worse, and some teams are going to be substantially better.
Right. I didn't beforehand, and I just wanted to be somewhere not outside of like 17-13, like maybe 16-14 split, but it ended up being 15-15.
I think I have 13 and 17, something like that.
And so 13 unders, 17 overs.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're the real optimist here, but that's not surprising.
Well, we'll get to that once. Now we're getting towards the good teams.
Now we only have overs left for William.
Yeah.
Indiana Pacers, their over-under is 44.5, and they won exactly 45 last year. So if they're exactly the same, they should be the over. I don't think they've regressed too much, and this is my logic for taking the over with them. I think Paul George is a really great player. I think he is still somewhat underrated, given that I think he's a potential MVP candidate, and I don't know that everyone necessarily sees him that way.
Mm-hmm.
Miles Turner is growing into a good player.
Miles Turner had like 30 points and 17 rebounds in his first game this season.
Yeah, so I definitely see more of the same from Indiana, pushing for home court advantage in the playoffs. How about you?
I really, really wanted to make this a lock, but in the format that we did, we could only take 5 locks total. So I ended up not locking it, but I think it was just it seems unrealistic to me to think that this team would lose more games this year than they did last year. They've got Paul George. He's got a full healthy season under his belt. He's one of the top 10 players in the league. Jeff Teague they brought in over George Hill. I don't understand why people like George Hill so much. I guess he made open shots occasionally, but I think Jeff Teague has the potential to be really useful for this team. Thaddeus Young.
His real plus minus is outstanding.
I'm guessing you're being sarcastic about that.
No, it is actually.
Oh, it is. Oh, okay.
He's like one of those sabermetric players. So all the sabermetric analysts love him.
Oh, is this George Hill?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Well, I don't know. When he bleached his hair last year, it kind of did it for me. Thaddeus.
All the soccer players are doing
it. Okay, whatever. The Thaddeus Young thing, I think he's been underrated just because he's been hidden on really crappy teams. I think he's a very useful player. Miles Turner, I think this is the year where he makes his leap, at least the start of it. He's going to be a great two-way player, I think. Al Jefferson, they have coming off the bench. If you have Al Jefferson leading your second unit, that's pretty great. He's a good source of scoring, especially against a backup center if he's in at the right time of the game. Rodney Stuckey can actually be a pretty productive scorer. Monte Ellis at the starting position, I'm not actually huge on him, but he has scoring potential for sure, even if his defense is not what you would like it to be. So I just don't think that this team loses more games this year than they did last year. I have the over, and I would have locked it if we could have had more locks.
Fair enough. A team that is tied with Indiana in the over-under projections is the Detroit Pistons, 44.5. They won 44 last year, so if you expect them to be exactly the same, they would be just under. Where do you have them?
So I feel like for Detroit, I might actually have a bit of an unpopular opinion here. A lot of people are high on Detroit based on what they did last year. I have the under here. I think that so their acquisition at the end of last year was bringing Tobias Harris. And I actually really like Tobias Harris. I just don't know how he fits in with this roster. He's not yet a great three-point shooter. He's kind of good at a bunch of things, but none of them really mix with what this team is doing. Reggie Jackson is out for quite a while. I think he's out for 6 weeks. So Ish Smith is leading the charge as the ball-dominant point guard. And as much as I kind of enjoy watching him from time to time, he's not actually very good. So you're relying on Kentavious Caldwell-Pope to step up his scoring. You're relying on Marcus Morris and Andre Drummond. And you're hoping that their bench is good enough to anchor the front line when needed. So they brought in John Lure from the Grizzlies. They have Boban Boban Marjanovic, the really tall
Boban
guy from the
Giant.
Spurs. Yeah, Boban the Giant. And then Beno Udre, who's, a pretty productive player coming off the bench. I don't know. I don't see enough talent on this roster, especially without Reggie Jackson.
It's interesting. You mentioned like every player on their team except for their draft pick, Stanley Johnson. So
Stanley Johnson, I think, will be good eventually. I don't see him making a huge impact this year.
and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who has shown some promise, I think, definitely as a wing player.
I did mention him. I don't know.
Oh, you did? Oh.
Yeah, that's okay.
So
I think this team has some talent, and I think they'll probably be good for 42, 43 wins. I think they'll be chasing the 8th seed. I just don't think they're going to win 45 games when they're missing their best player for the first 6 weeks of the season.
I also take the under.
Yeah.
I'm hoping the Wizards overtake them and get home court advantage in the East.
Yeah.
But I do think the Jackson injury really does hurt them. He was their best player last year. I guess you could say Drummond.
Yeah, it sort of depends on...
But I think especially in tandem, they played really well in the pick and roll. And so we'll have to see. Ish Smith, definitely not the same player.
No.
I also have the under for the Detroit Pistons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I actually wouldn't be that surprised if Beno Udre ends up taking Ish Smith's job for a couple of weeks, but we'll see. All right.
I wouldn't much.
Yeah. Let's move on. Next up, we have, I believe, the Toronto Raptors.
We do indeed. Their over-under is 50.5. They won 56 games last year, so pegged for regression. I don't know that I necessarily agree, at least that they're going to regress to that degree. I'm going to take the over. I think they can lose a couple and still stay at 51 or higher. They have probably the best backcourt outside of Golden State, I would say, with Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan, assuming last year was not a fluke for DeRozan. Lowry, I think we know, was one of the top point guards in the NBA. The problem for them in the playoffs was they kind of disappeared. But I think they're in the regular season, they should be able to be one of the top 3 teams in the East once again. The trouble is probably in the front court for them. Jared Sullinger is now hurt, so that's not going to help things.
Not that I think he was going to be that big of a, firepower guy for them to begin with. I like him, but I don't think he's actually that good. He was fine in a backup role, but I don't know. They brought him in. They lost Bismack Biyombo.
But now they're playing Pascal Siakam instead of Jared Sullinger.
That's not a name I think I'm familiar with.
No, so that's why the Jared Sullinger injury hurts, because those 20 minutes or whatever he's going to play in the rotation end up going to somebody else.
Yeah, and they lost Bismack Biyombo, who's a really important defensive piece for them, especially when you consider that their plan to replace that was Sullinger, who's not a good defender by any stretch.
We'll see if Jakob Poeltl can be good, though.
Jakob Poeltl is interesting.
He didn't strike me as a great NBA-looking player watching him in college, but I'm not an expert.
Yeah, I think he's probably going to end up being sort of Zeller-y, which is that he'll be kind of bland and boring and, fine, I guess, but he's not going to be a game changer, I don't think. The thing that could make a difference for them, I think there's 2 things. One, Damari Carroll being healthy for a whole year. If they can have that, that will be very useful for them. His injury last season was devastating because they brought him in expecting him to make a difference against teams like the Cavs. Being somebody who can come in and guard LeBron, space the floor, shoot threes. Patrick Patterson was pretty good last year. If he can continue his shooting, he can be very useful. And then Jonas Valanciunas. He has had a pretty good start to the regular season, played well in the Olympics. People are talking about him maybe making a leap this year, but I don't know. He's been in the league for a few years now. I don't really know that there's a whole lot left to be made there. If he can take another step forward, this team can be pretty dangerous, and I think they'll win, over 50 games easily. I think they'll win 52 or 53 games. I'm taking the over just because, while I think they might not have as many breaks go their way as they did last year in terms of individual games, they aren't going to hopefully lose DeMar Carroll for quite as long. I think they're going to probably lose more games than they did last year, but not 7 more. I think they're going to win 51, 52 games and get the over.
They look good. I saw part of the game. It was last night against the Cavs, so I felt good about picking the over after watching that as well.
Yeah.
So we're both on the over on Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
Second to last, number 2 in the East, we have the Boston Celtics. Their over-under is 52.5. and they won 48 games last year. And then they picked up Al Horford in the offseason. So I think for me, that's enough to push them into the over just on its own. And plus, you consider that their roster is young. Those young players tend to improve year to year. Honestly, I probably would have been comfortable picking the over for that team without Horford. But then you also consider that they're exactly the kind of team that has been trying to make a big deal to trade for a superstar. That could still happen this year. I think for me, it's smart to gamble on the over that something like that happens and that they're going to end up being better than this projection. So I'm also going to make this my second lock.
Ooh, okay. Well, I do like the Celtics quite a bit. I think they're going to be really good this year. I think they're probably going to get the 2 or the 3 seed in the East. Vegas has them as the 4th most likely team to win the NBA championship. I think it's a little bit strong. They have the 4th best odds. I think,
well, that's purely probably because they're in the East.
yeah, well, I don't know. But in any case, this 53, so if you bet the over, you're expecting them to win 53 games. It seems a little high, but I'm still going to take the over just because of what you said. I think there might be a deal left to make here. And if they end up replacing Amir Johnson with Blake Griffin or something like that, I don't know. I think this team could be really, really good. I think they're going to be one of the best defensive teams in the league easily with Avery Bradley, Jay Crowder, Marcus Smart, Al Horford coming in. He's already going to be better than the people they had on defense and center last year. And also, Jaylen Brown, their draft pick, looks pretty good, actually. And even if he is going to have some offensive struggles, I think he's going to be a great defender in the league. And I think he'll be able to grow into that role pretty quickly.
Isaiah Thomas also had a breakout year last year. We already mentioned him earlier.
Mm-hmm.
He's looking like a very, very solid point guard. And I think he's going to enjoy having Al Horford as another player, a playmaker who can get on the ball. That will make their offense, maybe if not as good as their defense, certainly on a par competitively. I just think it's a really good balance they've got there, and feeling pretty good about the lock.
All right, well, I hope they do make the over. I would really like that. And so now we're moving on to the number 1 team by projections in the East at 56.5 games, the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Indeed. And before we talk about this year, can we just talk about the finals a little bit last year?
Yeah, we can talk about that.
Because those were awesome.
Those were fun to watch.
I don't think we actually have talked about it yet on our podcast.
Maybe not.
But just for reference, no team had ever come back from down 3-1 before in an NBA Finals.
Check.
And I don't consider myself someone who's especially prone to hyperbole. I think I've tried to take both sides, but I think LeBron James had the greatest NBA Finals of any player ever.
Wow.
I challenge anyone to point out another Finals to me. But remember, the Warriors last year had the greatest regular season team of all time.
Mm-hmm. 73 wins.
Games, obviously. They had the greatest offense ever, I think, unquestionably. They also had outstanding defensive efficiency. LeBron James led both teams in points, rebounds, assists, blocks, and steals.
So every useful category.
Yes. So for people who still say he's not a top 3 player of all time, you're just wrong.
Yeah, for me he's number 2.
Yeah, I can understand if you want to make an argument for longevity for Kareem or for career postseason stats in total for Jordan, but otherwise there's just no argument. People that say he's not clutch or doesn't have a killer instinct just aren't paying attention. It reminds me of Stephen Colbert, the bit that he's famous for, truthiness.
Yeah.
It just sounds right? LeBron, he's really good, but he just doesn't have a killer instinct. He's just not clutch, and it sounds right because people already believe it, but it flies in the face of the actual facts that we have in front of us.
He also has his iconic moment now, his one big play, the block, which I think it's actually pretty important for his legacy.
Games, do you see Nike made a commercial out of it?
I did see that.
Yeah, it's they always have these commercials where create these taglines, and this one was "come out of nowhere." It was all about LeBron's block, a 2-minute commercial.
To be fair, in terms of importance in the game to the series and just unbelievable athleticism and clutch defense. That's
It was so
that's
awesome.
probably the
Did you?
greatest single play I've ever seen live in
Oh my
basketball.
gosh, yes.
Like,
Were we watched that together, right?
yeah,
At like the apartment.
at Will's apartment,
Yeah,
right? That
yeah, Will and
was,
Ben's,
oh my
and
gosh.
I just like jumped up and started like yelling when that happened.
It's too bad because I was sort of rooting for the Warriors because I wanted them to cap off the best season of all time. But on the other hand, I love LeBron. I think he's gotten a lot of unfair flack. I think he's one of the two greatest players of all time. And I was really happy for him to see him get his championship. But now let's move on to this season.
Yeah, could not agree more.
Do you think they're going to win
This
the
season,
championship this season?
do I think they're going to win a championship?
Yeah.
Um, like if it's them versus the field, I'm going to take the field.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's really hard for me to evaluate where the Warriors are right now, especially after their first couple games. I think you have to say they're the favorite in the East. So in terms of teams that I like better than them, like before the season started, I would have said Warriors. I know it's only 2 games in for the Warriors, but I'm almost ready to put the Cavaliers over the Warriors in terms of favorite, but not quite. I'll still say the Warriors are my pick. How about you?
I don't quite know. This is really tough. I still think the Warriors are going to win. I think it'll be.
Yes.
I don't think it's a foregone conclusion by any means, but I think it's most likely that the Cavs will at least come out of the Eastern Conference. I think LeBron is motivated. The basically the best thing that could have happened for LeBron was what happened over the summer with Golden State making their super team, because now he is going to be locked in the season. He's going to want to prove everybody wrong. Everybody said, "Oh, like, yeah, I guess Cleveland won last year, good for them, but now they're toast. Like, Golden State's going to just have an easy walk to the final." And he's not going to want to hear that. He's going to be working hard. He's going to be trying to go for another MVP probably this year. His team is great. The Cavaliers look really good.
Back on the MVP thing, though, like I have heard other people make that sort of guess as well. But don't you think, just like he's a very strategic guy, don't you expect him to sort of do something along the lines of what he did last year, in which he took a little bit off defensively? I think that's fair to say. And was able to save up and be so dominant in the finals.
I think that would be a smart thing to do. I don't necessarily know that he's going to do it. I think he's fired up. I mean, he's busy chasing Jordan's ghost. Like, I don't know.
I am glad he took the summer off, at least to rest up. But yeah, no, I love the chase of Jordan that he has going on.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's always fun to watch history as it happens. And so going back to the over-under, though, their over-under is 56.5, and they won 57 last year. So basically, it's whether you think they're better or worse than last year.
I think they're better. I think Kevin Love is going to be much better. From what I hear, he's bulked up a little bit. He was skinnier than he wanted to be last year. I think he'll be able to bang a little bit more down in the bottom, in the lower bits of the court. I think that Kyrie Irving, there's not going to be any controversy this year. There was a lot of talk last year about, if they don't do well, are they going to trade Kyrie? This is obviously LeBron's team. Kyrie played an excellent finals. He had back-to-back 40-point games, and he ended up hitting what was the game-winning play in the finals, in Game 7, that won them the championship.
That was the shot that won.
There's no question now that he doesn't belong. Like, he's on this team. He's part of their big three. He's the second-best player on that team. He's probably one of the top, 10 to 15 players in the league now. And I think that he's going to be more comfortable. I think they're going to be great. They also have a full season of Channing Frye, who I think really helped them. And
with Irving, like his defense was really good in the finals, which has notoriously been pretty bad.
I don't think it's going to be that good this whole season, but
No, I mean, yeah, I don't expect. But like when he's on, like he did well against Curry, so it's there. There's a possibility to do well defensively for him.
Yeah, and one thing that people are saying that might be a possible regression point for this team is the loss of Della Vadova. And while I think that's fair that he brought some important things to the table, I didn't like him that much. And I don't know, have you watched any of this Kay Felder guy?
No. Is he good?
So they drafted Kay Felder. I really like him. I really liked him in college, just the way he played. I paid attention a little bit more coming up to the draft. And he was super psyched to be playing with LeBron. LeBron's like his idol. Imagine like Isaiah Thomas, but much more muscular, more athletic, and like defensively actually pretty good.
Wow. Where did he play?
That's a good question. Not Providence. That's the wrong guy. I always mix him up with Chris Dunn.
Yeah, that was pretty done.
Yeah, no, but here, let me see. Maybe Cincinnati. It was one of these schools that like doesn't get a ton of national attention.
Yeah, but otherwise it looks like a very similar team to me.
He was the guy from Oakland University who was scoring like 40 points a game.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah. So as a
They-
backup, I
this
kind of like
looks
him.
like pretty much the same bench to me, other than him, and they added Dunleavy.
Yeah, Dunleavy, I think, will also
Richard
do the
Gibson has
Dellavedova
a
stuff.
year for him. I think that was probably a little bit of an aberration that he did so well last year, but
Who?
we'll see.
Who was
He's
this?
he's like 37 now. or
Oh,
something.
Richard Jefferson. Yeah. But I like the K Felder pick. Imam Shumpert, I don't know if he can stay healthy. He's like a useful player. He can play good defense. Mike Dunleavy will do the sort of rough and tumble stuff that Dellavedova did, which is important to have that kind of guy on your team. Somebody who's willing to take the flagrant foul every now and then. Dunleavy's a pretty dirty player.
He's also more of a shooter, right, than Belly?
Yeah, although Deli had a pretty good shooting year last year, especially in the playoffs, I think Dunleavy is overall better.
Yeah, and I love Tristan Thompson. He's a beast on the boards.
Mhm. Especially when you consider them.
Of course, they're Kevin Love and LeBron, so
Yeah.
they're a good rebounding team.
When you think about them playing against teams like the Warriors, who are already getting beat up on the offensive boards, I think that they're going to have a lot of trouble playing big teams like this.
Right. That was such a huge edge that Cleveland had in that series was the boards.
Yeah. So we'll see how it goes, but I think that they could coast to 57 wins and get the over. I expect them to get more like 60 plus, like 61, 62 wins. I guess the East is a little better, but I think this team is better too, and I think they're going to get the over easy. This is actually my first lock. This is my only Eastern Conference lock.
I agree with you. I'm over and lock. This is my third lock.
Yeah, well, you guys will all get to hear my locks tomorrow in the Western Conference podcast. Do we have anything else we want to talk about with the East?
I'm feeling pretty good about that. So having fun watching the first couple of games this year. I'm actually going to try and watch more NBA than I did last year of the regular season.
Mm-hmm.
Last year was, I think, a special year, and I'm really interested to see what happens this year.
No, the NBA is on the rise. I mean, you can tell with the new TV money, the TV deal they have that caused the cap to spike like that. That's because people like the NBA. People are watching it. It's a valuable product. And while a lot of the other leagues, like the big major ones like MLB, NFL, are dealing with problems right now, I think the NBA, for the most part, is on the rise, and people are really excited about the storylines this year.
Yep.
All right. Well, we'll come back tomorrow with our...
NBA and MLS going to take over NFL slot.
Yes, exactly. So we'll come back tomorrow with our Western Conference over-unders. Thank you guys for listening.